Math 3 students. So far this semester, we have done a lot with polynomials. We went over how to add them, subtract them, multiply them, and factor them. And factoring is pretty much the opposite of multiplication, which I'm sure in your mind, right, you think opposite of multiplication is division. And that's actually what we're going to work on today. We're going to learn how to actually divide polynomials instead of using the factoring method. So the way I'm going to teach you today, it's called synthetic division. There are different ways to divide polynomials, and the method we're using today is synthetic. All right. So it's essentially just an algorithm that you're going to have to learn how to use here to divide. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the second portion here and set it equal to 0. So we've got x minus 1 equals 0, okay? We add 1 to both sides, and we get that x equals 1. So after you get that, you're going to put that number right here, okay? Then you're going to go ahead and take the coefficients of the polynomial you are dividing, okay? So the coefficients here would be 1, 4, 1, and negative 6. Now, one important thing I want to point out is this polynomial isn't missing any of its terms. The powers go 3, 2, and then that's 1, and then none, 0, right? And you're going to see that if you're missing any of those terms, you know, like if it's skip the quadratic term or skip the linear term or something, you have to put in a placeholder there, so you would put in 0. But in this case, we had all of the terms here, so we didn't have to put in any placeholders. So the way that this works is this first number, you're going to drag down, and he goes right there. And then you're going to take the number you have here and multiply it with this number. So 1 times 1 gives me 1. Then you just add down. All right, you combine these values. 4 plus 1 gives me 5. And again, I'm going to go ahead and multiply this number here and this number here. Get a 5. I go ahead and add down. 1 plus 5 gives me 6. I'm going to go ahead and multiply this number and this number. That gives me 6. And then negative 6 plus 6 is 0. Okay? So what does this mean? How does this work? Well, these numbers down here are pretty much your answer. And the way that you write your answer is you have to look at your highest power. Okay, so our highest power was 3, and we divided by like a degree 1, so it's just going to go down 1 degree. Okay, so these are now the coefficients of your second degree polynomial. So we know that the powers are going to be x squared, x, and then our constant. And we've got a positive 1, which remember I'll put it there so you can see where it's going, but we typically wouldn't write that. So we put a 1 there, a 5 here, and then a 6 here, and those are the coefficients on our terms. This guy on the end is your remainder, okay? So if you have a remainder, we're going to talk about what that means in terms of the polynomial. And there's different ways you can write it. Sometimes you would just write like remainder, you know, if you had a remainder, you would say, you know, like remainder 10 or whatever. In this case, you don't have a remainder, so you wouldn't even put it, and this is your answer here. All right. So let's go ahead and try another one. So first step, you take this guy, set it equal to 0. So we got x minus 2 equals 0. I get x equals 2. So that's the number that's going to go into our little box here. Now we have to go ahead and take our coefficients. If you remember on the first problem, I talked about how you can't skip over any terms. So we start out with a power of 3, but then we go to a power of 1. We don't have a power of 2 here. So what we have to do is account for that power of 2. Well, if the power of 2 is not there, that means that the coefficient is 0, okay? So we can go ahead and put in 0 as our placeholder. So our coefficients on this polynomial are going to be 1, 0, negative 6, and 4. Then we go ahead and just follow the steps of synthetic division. We're going to drag our 1 down. We multiply this guy and this guy. We put a 2 there. We add down. 0 plus 2 is 2. We go ahead and multiply 2 and 2. I get 4. We add down, so negative 6 plus 4 is going to give me a negative 2. Again, we multiply negative 2 times 2 gives me a negative 4. I again have a remainder of 0. So we can go ahead and write our resulting polynomial. We started out with a cubic, right? The highest power was 3. We divided by a linear term, so we're just going to go down one value. Whenever you're using synthetic division, you really can only use it when you are dividing by a linear polynomial. So every single time you use synthetic, this power is just going to go down by 1. So we're going to have an x squared, an x, and then a constant. The 1 would go here, which we don't write. We've got a positive 2 and a negative 2, and that would be our answer because we don't have a remainder. All right, let's go ahead and try another one. So we go ahead, take this guy, set it equal to 0. We get that x equals negative 3, so we put that in our little box. Then we go ahead and take our coefficients from this guy. Now again, don't forget, you have to make sure that you don't skip over any terms. This guy goes 3, 2, 1, none. So he's good to go. We're just going to take his coefficients, which are 3, negative 2, negative 23, and 14. We drag the first guy down. We multiply negative 3 and 3, and I get negative 9. Negative 2 plus negative 9 gives me negative 11. We again multiply negative 3 and negative 11, which gives me positive 33. I add down, I get 10. I'm going to go ahead and multiply, and I get negative 30. Now in this case, we do end up with a remainder, right? We're going to get, let's see, 14 minus 30 is what, negative 16? Yes. So we'll go ahead and I'll show you how to write your answer on this one. Again, our power is just going to go down by 1. So if we started with a cubic, we're going to have a quadratic. So x, x. So the 3 goes here, negative 11 goes here, and our 10 goes here. Then we're just going to put remainder negative 16. There are different ways that you can write your answer using a remainder. But in this case, we're just going to go ahead and write remainder like an R, and then whatever we have left over. Alrighty, let's go ahead and try this one. So we take this guy, set it equal to 0, and we get x equals 3. That number goes here. Then we go ahead and take our coefficients, make sure we're not missing any terms, 3, 2, 1, none. All right, so we are good to go. So our coefficients are 1, negative 8, 9, and negative 5. We go ahead and drag this down. We get 1, 3, negative 5. We multiply 3 times negative 5, we get negative 15. 9 minus 15 is going to give us a negative 6. 3 times negative 6 gives us a negative 18. So negative 18 minus negative 5 is going to give us a negative 23. We started out with a cubic, so we're going to have a quadratic. The coefficient here is 1, which we don't write. Minus 5, I don't know why I keep writing my 5s like that. Minus 6, and then our remainder is going to be negative 23.